One of the things that a lot of people wanted to correct me on was about barbarians. I don't exactly know what I said in the video, but I believe I said something to the effect of barbarians.
I'm sure you can find the clip of it and put it in the video here somewhere.
I'll put it in here, but recently we talked about D&D 3E. Went into a little bit of a dive about the lost D&D that no one really talks about because 3.5 came along a few years later and just kind of surpassed it as a much updated version.
Yeah.
That got lots of attention and lots of comments back, and which
is great. We love the comments. Most of them were positive, even.
Yes, actually, not a lot of negative comments. Just a lot of people that were just really happy that we were talking about 3.5. We were talking about 3, but talking about different editions that they liked and everything like that. Really appreciate it. And then we got some people that were looking to give us more information about 3 and some of the things that we didn't really go into detail on in that video.
Or that we might have gotten wrong. There were a bunch of corrections to it, which is fine.
Yeah, because we're not experts.
No, we never claim to be experts. Here, disclaimer, we're not experts.
We are not.
I haven't played 3rd edition or 3.5 in probably a decade.
Right, and I played it the once as 3.5, but I was just interested in 3 and had a limited amount of information at my fingertips to dig into. One of the things, well, there were a couple things. There's Prestige, we'll get to that in another video. But one of the things that a lot of people wanted to correct me on was about barbarians. I don't exactly know what I said in the video, but I believe I said something to the effect of barbarians.
I'm sure you can find the clip of it and put it in the video here somewhere.
I'll put it in here, but this was also the edition where barbarians and sorcerers were introduced. So they were not around before this
before 3.5?
3.
Oh,
third
sorry.
edition. And people said that that's not exactly true. Someone did try to make me feel a little bit better by saying that Barbarian as part of the core rule set was introduced in 3E as part of the core rules. But the history of the Barbarian goes back further than that. Goes back to like AD&D. And I thought we'd talk a little bit about that, and also something I wanted to dig into is the origin of the Barbarian, which is about Conan the Barbarian and the lamentations of the women and all of that good stuff. So we can talk.
My favorite thing.
You always need to talk about the lamentations of the women.
I do constantly.
That's great. But you have to do it in the Arnold Schwarzenegger voice or it doesn't count. Sorry. No?
Can't do it.
Damn. Okay, so the class was introduced in 1985. Went through a number of evolutions, as you probably know. It's based on... a lot of people wanted to make me very aware of this as well. Robert E. Howard's Conan the Barbarian. I guess also Kothar and Fafhrd to a lesser extent, but it's pretty obvious.
Great pronunciation.
Sorry, Gardner Fox's Kothar and to a lesser extent Fritz Lieber's Fafhrd. Fafhrd.
It's fine.
You pronounce it. Anyway, that's the Wikipedia, but I will tell you that I think that they are stretching a little bit there because Conan is definitely the main inspiration for this, which I will get to in a bit. First official Barbarian character class was introduced by Gary Gygax in Dragon 63 in June 1982 as a subclass of fighter. This was also pointed out to me by some of our commenters in the video. The Barbarian later appears in Advanced Dungeons & Dragons, Manual Unearthed Arcana in 85, and the Barbarian, along with the Cavalier, received a revision in Dragon Magazine 148, which was in 1989. As the author David Howry felt that the classes described in Unearthed Arcana was too powerful and too vaguely defined. Another version also appeared in Oriental Adventures in 85, And then later in Advanced Dungeons & Dragons 2nd edition, it appeared in the Complete Fighter's Handbook as a character kit. And later as a standalone class in the Complete Barbarians Handbook, which gets you to 3rd edition, where it is a base character class.
Right, they fleshed it out a lot instead of making it the fighter subclass, essentially.
The interesting thing that I found as I started just looking around, tooling around, this actually goes back a little bit further if we want to look at the origin story, to Dragon Magazine 36 in April of 1980, where Gary Gygax devoted the entirety of his Sorcerer's Scroll column to a dossier on, you guessed it, Robert E. Howard's Conan. What I thought was really interesting, though, is that Gygax, and thank you to a 2010 article from Delta's D&D Hotspot, the hottest of spots for D&D, they gave this chart, which Gygax had listed in that article, of stat blocks for Conan. And what I think is really interesting is that when you look at it, I have not seen this before. He has different stat blocks for Conan, and fighter levels, thief levels, strength, intelligence, all of that, based on what age he is. I've never seen that. I've never seen this idea of dexterity like going up and then hitting a peak of 20 at the time that you're 25, and then decreasing down to like 16 when you are 70 years old.
So that actually was a thing that was relevant in like 3rd and 3.5.
Okay.
Which is, I don't know if that's still more relevant in the later editions. I don't think so. I don't remember seeing it.
I've never seen a thing in 5 where your stats go down over time.
So what happens is the older you get, your physical stats will decrease, but your mental stats increase a few points.
Okay.
Because it plays into the fact that as you get older, generally speaking, your body starts getting weaker.
Mm-hmm.
But your mind becomes more sharp, essentially.
Okay. I played a game once that was Cronus Before the Ashes, which was also a like Souls-like game, and the conceit in that was that you started when you were like 16 years old or something, and every time you died, you gained a year, and it affected both your main stats of like physical and mental stats, but also what your caps were on those stats. As you got older and older, you had lower caps for your strength and your dexterity, but you had higher caps that you could have for your mental abilities. Probably inspired by something like this.
Yeah, I assume that in 5e and probably 4e they kind of phased that out in D&D because they streamlined the game a lot, which isn't necessarily bad, but it was a thing that you could do. So you could make like an 80-year-old fighter who was a lot smarter than he was strong at points, you know.
Right.
Anyways.
Also, I think that when you're looking at like progression in 5e, they don't really have you go, even if you're playing a campaign and you go from like level 1 to level 20, you probably aren't going from like age 20 to age 70. I think if you've watched any of the long-term campaigns, like from the time that they start to the time that they end, they probably only age a couple years or a few years in total, so it wouldn't really affect it very much. One of the things I think is really interesting is the charisma stats. If you look at the charisma stats, there is a slash so that you see like 15-16 or 15-18. And this is based on the charisma that Conan would have towards men or women.
Okay.
Because, of course, Conan is going to be much more charismatic towards the ladies. At least between 20 and 30, and then it evens out. It evens out again, and he's just as charismatic. And then he gets less charismatic later. Also, by the time he's 40, maybe you can explain this to me. By the time he's 40, his fighter level is 24 and his thief level is 12. That's 36 levels.
Okay.
That's a lot of levels.
Yeah, that's
right?
epic level.
That's a big level.
That's epic level fighter and not an epic level rogue.
Yeah, or thief as it would have been known at the
Thief.
time.
Sorry.
Yeah, I think it's also interesting that the idea of Conan and the origin of the barbarian as class is a combination of a fighter and a thief, because I don't see anything rogue-like in barbarians as we know them now as a full fleshed out character.
Light armor, maybe.
Okay, yeah, more about dexterity than... Well, no, barbarians rely heavily on strength. I guess speed? Speed would probably be one of those things. This is something that I just think is kind of interesting, and probably the most interesting thing as I started looking through the origin story of the barbarian, which is this idea of, you know, these epic characters and what would happen to their stat blocks over the course of time. It's funny, too, that, like, Gary Gygax was doing this in 1980, and nowadays I'll see people that will take a popular character from multimedia and make one of those D&D 5e stat blocks for them in a very similar fashion.
Yeah, I've seen that a bunch.
Yeah. So
Old Spice did that a little while ago.
Oh, right. You gotta get Monocle Guy. I like this idea. I don't know who I would put into a stat block like this or what I would want to do, but
I wouldn't.
You wouldn't do it?
No.
No? Just to see how they'd age over the course of time?
Oh, like the aging stat block? Or
Yeah.
just, in general, I just wouldn't personally, but that's me.
Well, the idea of the aging stat block, though, I think is just the more interesting piece of this. Like this.
If you're gonna do somebody, I'd say do Charlie Sheen.
Do Charlie Sheen, and those stat blocks are going to be pretty amazing.
Yeah, but we already know what class he is. He's a warlock with tiger blood.
Oh, that's right, tiger blood. Yeah. No. Wouldn't he then have to be a sorcerer?
No.
With
He's
magical
just,
blood.
No.
Blood.
He's a warlock.
Oh, okay.
But he's got bloodline.
Oh, okay. Warlock. All right.
Or he's a lycanthrope. Who knows?
He could be a lycanthropic warlock. We're
That's what I'm
tiger.
saying.
We're tiger.
Exactly.
Perfect. Somebody make a stat block for Were Tiger, Charlie Sheen. I'm there for it. That's a character to play. Now, today, if we go to 5e, the Barbarian is significantly different than these earlier iterations, obviously. I have not played a Barbarian in 5e or ever. I don't remember if you have played a Barbarian in 5. I think you played Barbarians in earlier editions, if I remember correctly.
I don't think I played one in 5.
I have played with Barbarians, and they are a handful.
They can be fun. They can be rowdy. It depends on the type of Barbarian you play. I've played in 3.5, my character Rexall was a Barbarian who was gonna multi-class into Wizard.
Oh,
because he was smart.
Barb Wizard.
His third highest stat was like a 16 intellect.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
So I was like, why not? Or it might have been 14.
Sure.
But like that's intelligent enough to cast spells.
The only Barbarian that I've actually played with in 5e was a halfling. A little halfling Barbarian that liked to smash things a lot.
Yeah, that tracks.
Yeah. Got himself a nice little, like, +2 hatchet and went to town on stuff. Which, considering I was a shadow monk, we worked well together as basically the front line for the party.
Yeah.
Very offense-defense. Gotcha. And he was very small, and I was ginormous, so that was also fun. In summary, you're right. We did not go into great detail or explanation about the Barbarian when we did that 3.0 video. Hopefully this fleshes it out a little bit more, explains it, And also, what do people think about the idea of that original article from Dragon Magazine 36 where, Gary Gygax actually had the stat block for Conan? Do you see that as something that we could do in the modern era where we have different stats as they age? Because that might be an interesting thing to bring back that I have never seen in 5. I don't think they had it in 4. But then again, here's the other thing. In the older versions of D&D, the intent was that the game world is in real time, right? That you
I don't know.
Oh, at some point maybe we'll talk more about that. There is a thing where the intention, because there were tons of people that wanted to play and schedules are always like all over the place, is that the game world is to be played in real time, one-to-one analog with the world outside.
That's strange to me. I don't know.
But the only reason I bring that up is if you're looking at a character from the time they're 15 to 70, does that mean I have to play this literal game for 55 years to have my stats increased?
I mean, in that case, yeah, I'd say your stats can increase if you've been playing for 55 years, but honestly, if you've been playing the same character, going out on crazy adventures for 55 years, I would like to know what level you are and how you haven't died.
With gusto.
Yeah.
Let us know how that works in the comments down below. I know you will, because we're talking about your favorite edition.